Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. In this series, the LabZtorm Effect v.3. This is an audio podcast in the series aligned to the role of endogenous opioids in ischaemic preconditioning or IPC in humans. This is an audio podcast aligned to a Storm Lobostics soliloquy and another Storm Lobostics production. This audio podcast will be in and around ischaemia-reperfusion or IR injury. To highlight or to begin with, to highlight here as part of this particular audio podcast. um, uh, 2016, in 2016, it sort of marked the 30-year anniversary of the discovery of ischaemic preconditioning. The endogenous phenomenon can paradoxically protect the heart or cardiac muscle from acute myocardial infarction by subjecting it to one or more brief cycles of ischemia and reperfusion. After complete reperfusion, the methodology is perhaps one of the most powerful interventions known to reduce a known infarct. The concept of ischemic preconditioning has evolved into ischemic conditioning, a terminology that encompasses a number of sort of regarding endogenous cardioprotective strategies applied either directly to the cardiac muscle. So, for example, ischemic preconditioning or post-conditioning, or from afar, for example, a limb in context of remote ischemic preconditioning, per-conditioning or post-conditioning. Investigations of signaling pathways underlying ischemic conditioning have identified a number of therapeutic targets for pharmacological manipulation. Over the past 3 decades, a number of ischemic and pharmacological cardioprotection strategies discovered in experimental investigations have been examined and assessed in the clinical setting of acute myocardial infarction. In the setting of acute myocardial infarction, and so IR injury has been known to be a sort of a complex pathological process, and can be defined as again as sort of a damage to an organ or tissues caused during ischemia and reperfusion. IR injury is encountered in a variety of medical and surgical interventions, including thrombolysis, coronary angioplasty, organ transplantation, and cardiopulmonary bypass. To improve the outcome in context of cardiovascular, novel treatments have been sort of gone through various particular experimental or investigational trials, and literature has highlighted that pharmaceutics, in context of pharmaceutics, have been developed to protect cardiovascular or cardiac muscle against IR injury. Novel concepts are still or had been developing had developed and had still been developing developing to better understand the sort of science that surrounds IR injury. In original works by Hausenloy and Yalon, Hausenloy and Yalon. There has been a sort of a basis in around understanding the concepts of injury, which has allowed and propagated research to investigate strategies to protect the cardiac muscle against IR injury. And again, one of the main sort of modalities in sort of doing this has included ischaemic preconditioning and IPC. And so the next audio podcast in this series in and around the role of endogenous opioids and ischaemic preconditioning (IPC) in humans will highlight more into ischaemic preconditioning or IPC, there will be there will be audio podcasts. There will be audio podcasts in following from then to highlight more intricate aspects, more of the intricate aspects around this series. So that draws this audio podcast to a close. This has been an audio podcast on ischaemia-reperfusion or IR injury. This has been an audio podcast aligned to the LabZtorm effect v.3, a Storm Robotics soliloquy, and another Storm Robotics production. Thank you for tuning in.